Welcome back to another battle between. In a confrontation between true form Darkseid and true form Oblivion, determining the winner is far from a simple task. Darkseid, the Lord of Evil, is the embodiment of tyranny, oppression, and the anti-life equation. Oblivion, Marvel's supreme abstract entity, is the embodiment of nothingness, the empty void that existed before all things were born and will remain after everything has been completely destroyed. To understand who would be the last ones standing, we must take a deep dive into their origins, the true nature of their powers, and the extraordinary feats that have defined the terror of each entity. Darkseid, also known by his true name, Uxus, is far more than a god or a conqueror of worlds. Darkseid is the embodiment of evil itself, the platonic concept of tyranny and oppression. There is an enormous difference between Darkseid's avatar and his true form. The Darkseid, who has fought Superman or the Justice League, is merely an avatar, a small fragment of his consciousness projected into the multiverse to interact with lower layers of reality. These avatars can be defeated, killed, or driven back, but they are not his true self. Darkseid's true form exists within the sphere of the gods, a metaphysical realm beyond and above the ordinary physical multiverse. In this form, Darkseid does not possess a physical body in any human sense. He is a multi-dimensional entity, a living concept so vast that his very presence can fracture the fabric of reality. The power of true form Darkseid cannot be measured by thermal energy or kinetic force. It is the power to impose his will upon the very nature of existence itself. He is the source of the anti-life equation, a cosmic mathematical formula proving that free will is an illusion, and that every living being, from ordinary humans to gods themselves, ultimately belongs to Darkseid. The most terrifying ability possessed by true form Darkseid is the Omega Effect. This is not merely a pair of red energy beams fired from his eyes. The Omega Effect is a cosmic concept of absolute ending, a decree issued by Darkseid himself that the target must be erased from every layer of reality. It cannot be stopped through physical strength, cannot be reversed through magic, and cannot be escaped through time travel. The Omega Effect relentlessly pursues its target across every dimension and every timeline until that target has been completely erased from existence. In his true form, Darkseid does not even need to fire Omega beams. He simply has to will it, and reality itself rearranges to erase whatever he considers an obstacle. In addition, true form Darkseid possesses reality manipulation on a multiversal scale. He can alter the laws of physics, rewrite history, and bend the very logic of the universe to suit his will. He is immune to every form of attack originating from lower layers of reality. Even an attack from the mightiest god or a multiversal cosmic entity would become meaningless upon reaching Darkseid's true form because he exists on a higher conceptual level. To fully understand the power of true form Darkseid, we must look at one of his greatest battles, the events of Final Crisis. During this event, Darkseid was slowly dying after being wounded by a special weapon, and he chose to descend into the physical multiverse. However, this was not an avatar. It was his true form falling into the multiverse itself. The mere presence of true form Darkseid passing through the layers of reality was enough to cause the structure of the multiverse to begin cracking apart. Reality itself could not withstand the conceptual weight of his existence. Dimensions collapsed, time descended into chaos, and the laws of physics were torn apart. Darkseid did not need to attack anyone. The mere existence of his true form was enough to bring about the collapse of all things. He fought against the combined forces of the Justice League, the New Gods, and even the Monitors, and only when Superman used a reverse version of the Omega Effect, along with his own sacrifice, was Darkseid finally driven back. However, the price was the near total collapse of the multiverse. Another notable conflict was the battle between Darkseid and the Spectre, the embodiment of the wrath of God in the DC universe. The Spectre is an entity of nearly limitless power, capable of altering reality and punishing sinners. However, when confronted with Darkseid's will, especially as Darkseid wielded the power of the sphere of the gods, the Spectre was overwhelmed. Darkseid not only resisted the Spectre's power, but also attempted to impose the anti-life equation upon the entity itself, demonstrating that even the wrath of God could be subdued before the absolute force of tyranny. Darkseid also clashed with Highfather and the people of New Genesis on numerous occasions. The war between Apocalypse and New Genesis was not merely an armed conflict, but an ideological struggle that lasted for millennia. Darkseid proved that he could manipulate, deceive, and shatter peace agreements solely to spread chaos and suffering. He did not fight to conquer territory. He fought to prove that free will is weak and that submission is the only path. In some storylines, Darkseid even attempted to breach the source itself, the origin of all existence in the DC universe, with the goal of controlling or destroying the very concept of life. Although he was often driven back by the heroes, the will and ambition of true-form Darkseid were never completely extinguished. However, true-form Darkseid is not without limitation. His greatest limitation lies within his own conceptual nature. Darkseid is the embodiment of oppression and evil. This means he always requires something to oppress, a free will to subjugate. Without the existence of beings capable of free will, the concept of Darkseid would lose part of its very purpose. He is an active entity, constantly driven to expand and impose his authority. That relentless desire sometimes makes him predictable in his grand strategies, creating openings that opponents of superior intellect can exploit. Furthermore, while his true form is nearly invulnerable to external attacks, his existence still depends upon the balance of the sphere of the gods and its relationship with other cosmic concepts, such as the presence. Now, let's move on to true form Oblivion. Oblivion, also known as Oblivion or the Void, is one of the 4 supreme abstract entities of the Marvel Universe, alongside eternity, infinity, and death. If eternity is the embodiment of everything that exists within the universe, infinity is the embodiment of space, and death is the embodiment of the end of life, then Oblivion is the embodiment of non-existence. He is the empty void that existed before the Big Bang, and the only thing that will remain after everything in the multiverse has been completely destroyed. Oblivion is not a god, nor is he a living being. He is a fundamental concept, an absolute law of the universe. True form Oblivion has no physical form, no limits, and is bound by neither the laws of space nor time. Oblivion exists in the far shore, a realm beyond the comprehension of ordinary cosmic entities, or perhaps is the very emptiness that surrounds and permeates eternity itself. Oblivion is the blank canvas upon which the universe is painted, and he is also the eraser that will wipe away every stroke when time comes to an end. The power of true form Oblivion is absolute negation. He does not need to attack, defend, or wield any form of energy. Oblivion's power lies in the fact that he is the very definition of non-existence. Any attack directed at Oblivion becomes meaningless because you cannot destroy, injure, or alter something that is already nothingness. Physical attacks, energy-based assaults, or even reality manipulation simply pass through him or are absorbed into the emptiness he represents. Oblivion possesses the ability to erase the existence of any entity, not only on a physical level, but also on a conceptual one. He can make it so that an entity never existed at all, erasing every memory, every consequence, and every trace of that being from the timeline and the multiverse. Another important aspect of Oblivion is his relationship with the other abstract entities. Oblivion and eternity are 2 sides of the same coin. Existence cannot exist without non-existence as its foundation. However, Oblivion constantly longs to consume eternity and return everything to its original state of nothingness. Throughout numerous cosmic events, whenever eternity has been weakened or threatened, Oblivion has always been the force waiting in the background, ready to fill the void. He also shares a complex relationship with death. While death represents the end of life, Oblivion represents the end of everything, including the very concept of death itself. Although Oblivion rarely intervenes directly in events occurring on the lower levels of the universe, his presence is always felt as the ultimate threat. During the Infinity Gauntlet event, when Thanos obtained omnipotent power, he attempted to manipulate and even destroy the abstract entities. However, Oblivion, together with eternity, infinity, and death, united into a single entity to confront Thanos. This demonstrates that even when faced with the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, Oblivion remained an indispensable part of the cosmic structure, and his existence was a constant that even the most powerful cosmic artifacts could not completely erase. Oblivion also played a pivotal role during the Cancerverse storyline. The imbalance between life and death within the Cancerverse drew the attention of the cosmic entities, and Oblivion, as the embodiment of nothingness, stood as the complete opposite of that unchecked expansion. He is the reason balance must be maintained, because if life were allowed to dominate completely, it would ultimately lose all meaning. In the end, Oblivion would be the force that consumes everything once the cosmic structure collapses under the overwhelming weight of excessive existence. Another notable confrontation occurred when cosmic entities attempted to challenge Oblivion. Beings possessing multiversal levels of intelligence and power sought to enter the far shore or approach the true nature of Oblivion in search of ultimate power or answers to existence itself. Most who dared to do so were completely erased, not because Oblivion attacked them, but because their minds and very essence could not endure contact with the absolute concept of non-existence. They simply dissolved into the void, becoming part of Oblivion without offering any resistance. However, Oblivion also possesses characteristics that could be considered weaknesses in the context of battle. His greatest weakness is his passive nature. He is a concept, not an active warrior. Oblivion has no ambition, no grand plan, and no desire to conquer in the way Darkseid does. He simply exists, waiting for everything to destroy itself or come to its natural end. Oblivion does not actively attack eternity or other entities. He merely reacts or waits for the proper moment. This passivity means that Oblivion may not actively exploit an opponent's weaknesses or devise elaborate strategies to secure victory in a direct confrontation. Now we have both entities. If we judge them by offensive capability and fighting intent, Darkseid holds a clear advantage. True form Darkseid is an entity with will, purpose, and an unrelenting desire to expand his dominion. He would actively employ the Omega Effect, the anti-life equation, and his reality manipulation abilities in an attempt to erase Oblivion. Darkseid would not wait. He would attack, impose his will, and attempt to force the concept of nothingness itself to submit to his authority. In a scenario where Darkseid could impose the laws of the sphere of the gods upon Oblivion, he might even attempt to turn nothingness into a tool that serves his tyranny. However, when we examine the conceptual nature of these two entities more closely, it becomes clear that Oblivion holds the absolute existential advantage. Darkseid, even in his true form, is still an entity of existence. He is a concept, a will, a source of power, and an entity with a defined identity. He is something. By contrast, Oblivion is non-existence itself. He is the void, the absence of every definition, every will, and every form of existence. Oblivion has no will, no life, and no concept of possession. Every attack launched by Darkseid, whether on a multiversal or metaphysical scale, would disappear into the emptiness that Oblivion represents, like throwing a stone into a bottomless abyss or trying to burn the absence of oxygen with fire. On the other hand, Oblivion does not need to attack Darkseid in any conventional sense. The very nature of Oblivion is the ultimate end of all things. Darkseid, as a concept of existence, must ultimately submit to the universal law that everything which exists has an end, and that end is Oblivion. Even if Darkseid succeeded in extending his dominion across the entire multiverse, he would still exist within a framework, and that framework would eventually be surrounded and consumed by nothingness. Oblivion is the canvas, and Darkseid is merely a drawing upon it. Once the canvas is taken away, the drawing disappears with it. Furthermore, Oblivion's passive nature is not a weakness in this confrontation. Instead, it is an absolute defense. Darkseid requires an opponent upon whom he can impose his will. He needs resistance to validate his tyranny. Oblivion offers no resistance, possesses no will to subjugate, and provides no structure to manipulate. This completely nullifies both Darkseid's strategy and his very nature. Darkseid would be like a king issuing commands to emptiness, and the emptiness would never answer, never submit, and never change. We have already seen that even immensely powerful entities, such as eternity, can be replaced, divided, or weakened. Oblivion, however, as the concept of non-existence, remains a constant. He is the prerequisite for existence, and the inevitable outcome of destruction. Darkseid may shatter the multiverse, collapse dimensions, and unravel reality itself, but he cannot destroy or erase the very concept of non-existence, because doing so would require him to deny his own existence. In a confrontation between true form Darkseid and true form Oblivion, Darkseid could unleash every conceptual attack at his disposal. He could shake the layers of reality, bend logic itself, and attempt to impose his will. Yet every one of those efforts would dissolve into the emptiness that Oblivion embodies. Oblivion does not need to fight. He simply needs to exist, or rather simply not exist, and in time, according to the absolute laws of the universe, every concept, every will, and every form of tyranny, including Darkseid himself, will ultimately return to nothingness. Therefore, in my opinion, true form Oblivion would be the last entity standing, not by defeating Darkseid in battle, but simply by existing as the inevitable end that not even the Lord of Evil can escape. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for your support.